This is the Growth and Development lecture for adolescent age group. For this age group, we are talking about individuals between 11 years old to 20 years old. The objectives for this lecture are to recognize the normal growth and development for adolescents and also to apply Erikson and Piaget's stages of development to this population. The first part of adolescence is between 11 and 14 years old. We consider this early adolescence. And I know with the school age range that goes up to 12 years old, so there is a little bit of overlap between adolescence and school age here. So the early adolescence, we start, they have rapid growth. So these are when you really hit your big growth spurts. Reaching peak velocity, so this is that biggest growth spurt. For girls, it is a growth spurt about 12 months before the start of their menses or their period, which is about age 12, and then the boys reach their peak velocity at about age 14. That's when they shoot up in height. And secondary sex characteristics start appearing at this time. So this is things like breast development in the females, pubic hair, armpit hair. They do start their menstrual cycle. For males, they have an increase in the testosterone, so that just kind of makes their muscle mass larger, gives them that deeper voice, starting to develop facial and body hair. For the cognition, these adolescents in this age, they're, exploring ability for abstract thought. They're clumsy in grouping of new values. They're kind of starting to develop who they are and figuring out what their values are. They are very concerned about, comparing themselves, with normal compared to their other friends, or not even just friends, but just their same-sex peers that they have in clubs, groups, school. Their identity is very impacted at this age. They are preoccupied with rapid body changes, not only with height, but with the development of the hormones that are coming to, start making them sexually mature. They try out different various roles. They do have measurements of attractiveness. They like to conform to group norms. So kind of, with what one person's doing, the whole group is going to do. And at this time, their self-esteem can decline a little bit. With their relationships with parents, they are defining their independence, dependence boundaries of the parent. So they want to still remain dependent on the parent, but they're trying to detach and become, their own person and more independent. They don't have many major conflicts. They just have small little conflicts that can happen during this time. With their relationship with peers, this is probably one of the bigger aspects of this age group, is that, they want that peer group, they want those peer affiliations. They have many very, very close idealized friendships. So friends are more important to this age group than family or other things. And then they struggle for mastery within that group of figuring out who they are, what their role is in that friend group. As far as their sexuality goes, this is starting where they might begin self-exploration with masturbation, evaluating who they are sexually. It's in the very early stages of that. They might have limited dating. They might say they have a boyfriend or girlfriend, but that means, they might sit with each other at lunch, or, but there's not a ton of intimacy between the relationships at this age. And the psychologic health, a lot of mood swings again with this adolescence, dealing with the fluctuations in hormones. They may have some intense daydreaming, spending most of the time in not paying attention in school or what's going on. They might just be thinking about other things, and they might express their anger outwardly instead of just holding it in. Our middle adolescence age for this group is the 15 to 17-year-olds. And with their growth, this is when the female growth starts slowing down and when the male growth speeds up again. So at this point, this is where they're almost at full, their full growth potential of their height. They may grow, females maybe grow 1 to 2 inches after the onset of their menstrual cycle. And at this point, their secondary sex characteristics are well advanced. So the breasts are fully developed. On the females, the penis and scrotum and testicles are more developed on the males, as well as body hair, respectively, for each gender. As far as their cognition, they're developing that capacity for abstract thinking. They enjoy intellectual powers, and they do have starting more concern regarding any philosophic, political, or social problems. So they're able to have, relate to what's going on and have some conversations regarding those. As far as their identity, we still have a modified body image of themselves. They are still self-centered, almost in a narcissistic kind of way. They do have a rich fantasy life of, how they want to be living. Again, to go with that daydreaming still going on. They are idealistic in their identity, and they start to perceive future implications of current behavior and decisions. So they can understand, if I make this decision now, will it have good or bad outcomes? So, that can be in regards to driving, perhaps. This is the age where the adolescents are beginning to take driver's education training and get their license at 16 years old, so they would understand if they speed or run a red light, that has consequences. With their relationships with parents, so there is a lot of conflicts here regarding independence and control. These are the teenagers that think they know everything and they are so much smarter than their parents, even though the parents are just trying to provide them with guidance. So there is a push for an emancipation or a disengagement with their parents at this time. They want to be independent, not having anybody tell them what to do, but the parents are still there to provide them guidance and keep them safe. There is also the final and irreversible emotional detachment. So this is where they are becoming their own. They don't need to rely on their parents as much for, emotional reassurance as they did when they were younger. However, parents still play a big role in the emotional reassurance for adolescents. Relationships with peers. We are having a strong need for identity with this group. Their behavior standards are set up by their peer group, have a big fear of rejection, and there is more exploration of, ability to attract opposite sex. So maybe wearing certain clothes, maybe using perfumes or colognes or makeup or things of that to see, attracting the opposite sex, or maybe even the same sex, if that is where they are going with their identity. As far as sexuality, they may have multiple plural relationships. They do start to begin a internal identification of sexual preference, whether it be sexual preference towards opposite gender, same gender, both genders, neither gender, or they may be in between genders themselves as a transgender. They may, have this feeling of being in love. Maybe they have their first romantic partner at this time and they are in love with them. They also tentatively establish, uh, like I said, the relationships with that, maybe that first boyfriend, girlfriend. And then they have exploration of self-appeal of themselves. The psychological health, these adolescents, this age group tends to be more introspective in their thoughts. They tend to withdraw from the group when they're feeling upset. This is a age where they find it difficult to ask for help if they need it, so it is a good idea to check on these kids, ask them how they're doing, if they need help, because sometimes it is very hard to ask for help, but it might be a little bit easier to receive help when help is presented. And they may feel inadequate at this age as they are figuring out who they are. The last part of the adolescence group is the 18 to 20-year-old individuals. As far as their growth is concerned, at this age, they're physically mature, they're structurally sound, reproductive growth almost complete. At this age, we have reached peak uh, maturation. Their cognition, very well established abstract thought. We can perceive and act on long-range options. Problems are being able to be viewed comprehensively, and these adolescents' individual intellect and functional identity is established as well. As far as their identity goes, their body image, their gender roles are being more secured. However, this can be pretty fluid throughout the uh, age continuum. They do have a more mature sexual identity. They have an increase in self-esteem compared to some of the earlier adolescents where the self-esteem was a little bit lower, but now that self-esteem is being brought back up. They're more comfortable with physical growth as growth is slowing down for both males and females by this age, and their social roles are defined with their identity. With parents, their emotional and physical separation are completed. They have independence from the family, but they still belong, and that emancipation is nearly secured. And at this age range, this is when the adolescents are graduating high school, becoming adults, as 18 is the legal adult age in the United States. So they might be thinking about either going what to do after high school, after their parents. So, starting to become more independent in that way. With their peers, their peer group starts to recede, and it does transition at this point based on what the adolescents choose to do post high school, whether are they going to college, are they moving away to college, are they joining the military, are they doing a trade school, are they going straight into full-time employment somewhere. So it may change at this point. It may stay the same. There is more testing of the romantic relationships. So they may have a long-term partner by this time, or they are just interested in casually dating, may not be serious relationships at this point. And relationships in general, not just romantic relationships, but friendships are characterized for the late adolescent as a giving and sharing deal. As far as a late adolescent sexuality, they're able to form stable relationships and attachment. There is growing capacity for mutuality and reciprocity. The dating is included as a romantic pair, and this is where the individuals may publicly identify as gay, lesbian, bisexual, or whatever their sexual identity may be. And intimacy involves commitment for this age group. Psychological health, There's consistency of emotion, not too many mood swings like we've heard about through the other age ranges of the class, and anger is likely to be concealed for this group too, so they have a better control of their emotions. So for Erickson's stage of development, this is the identity versus role confusion for adolescents, and the cognitive and development and social environment that are occurring during the adolescence is what pushes these individuals to reflect on their place in society, the way others are viewing them, their own sense of self-worth, and options that they have regarding their career, the service to the community, and contributions in the future. For most adolescents, the formation of a coherent self-identity occurs sometime during late adolescence and into early adulthood. Now, on the flip side, that role confusion, this is when the adolescent is unsure of who they are, where they fit into society, into their family group, into their social or peer group, and they possibly can develop feeling disappointed and confused about their place in life. Part of the identity development and figuring out who you are, who the adolescent is the development of gender identity and sexual orientation. So like we mentioned earlier in the presentation, the sexual orientation is defined as the pattern of sexual arousal or romantic attraction to either a person of the opposite gender, same gender, both genders, neither gender, or this individual may be in the process of a gender transition. So this is also a period of time during which individuals commonly begin to identify their sexual orientation as part of their developing sexual identity. However, some cultural beliefs and values, societal and family pressures, or lack of similar peers can influence this identification process. And this is where some of that role confusion can come into for these adolescents. The formal operational stage is Piaget's last stage in the cognitive development. So this is the formal operational thought includes being able to think in abstract terms, consider consequences to actions, and hypothesize possibilities. So this is where the adolescent becomes capable of conceptualizing a future time perspective rather than just being tied to the concrete thinking of a here and now that's common during a latency period. So some of that earlier ages with the school age children. Some of the younger teens or the younger adolescents need concrete communication strategies, support of a parent, and frequent reminders, whereas the older adolescents who have developed that abstract thinking may be able to manage responsibilities of self-care and independently consider long-term implications of their behaviors. Thank you very much.